Okay, so hello, everybody who has joined, and to everyone who's going to watch this very webinar in the recording. My name is Lilia Kirilenko. I am a FCCA, so this means that I have taken and passed this very exam ages ago. And on top of that, I had great working career, and also this means that I am able to tell you about ACCA and its real application. Okay, and just hold on a second. Let it be. The backgrounds are one worse than the other one, than another one. Okay, let it be blurred. Up. Here we go. Yes, great. So I started my ACCA journey when I worked for a Big Four company. I was an auditor back then, and frankly, it's kind of, I'd really like to study, but also it felt like something that we have to do, and nobody knows why. Because unfortunately, the problem is that when you are, oh, I'm not muted. Hold on a second. Can anybody hear me? Because I can see that I
We
have
can hear
my,
you.
I'm not muted, right?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Yes, thank you. Okay. Anyways, I've been talking. So I started my ACCA journey when I worked for a Big Four company. And when you are an auditor, all the papers that you study are mostly relevant. Okay, so yes, you may benefit from double A exam, audit and assurance, but let's face it, audit companies have their own methodology and it can be slightly different. So for example, for us, I worked for EY, we didn't have a cut-off assertion because cut-off would be tested by the existence and occurrence, and there just was no need to have a separate assertion. We also didn't have some other aspects, and some of the steps that we were supposed to do in our audit were very different from whatever we had in the exam. We could say that some financial reporting exam, diploma in FRS or SBR was useful because, well, basically it's FRS. But again, let's face it, when you are just an auditor, up to a certain level, and for the majority of projects, you don't really need to know the requirements of FRS. I mean, it would be great if you did, but most likely you just perform a section and you kind of know what is going to be there, and you do know that you will never face IFRS 2 share-based payments. You will never face, let's say, employment benefits, IS 19, and so on. So, of course, when you study so much, and of course, it has to be done all the time because when you work for audit company, you unfortunately have to work weekends, you have to work long hours, and then you need to squeeze in these very studies somewhere in your life. And whatever you study doesn't seem to be relevant. But I would like to stress the fact that whatever job you have is whatever job you have applied when you were younger, when you were less experienced, when you were less qualified. And the higher you go, the more value your ACC career is going to get you, and the more different your work is going to be. And we all study not for something that we do, because if we would study something that we are doing, well, what would be the sense? We are supposed to already know what is that we're doing. We are studying for the future. And I was hired to work as a CFO for a manufacturing company. We had a subsidiary, we bought subsidiary, so I had to do all this consolidation stuff. We had a parent company, we had a fund that would buy the company, sell the company, and so on. So I have been hands-on, and now I think that I am competent and experienced enough to tell you how your ACCA career is going to apply to your CFO's role. Now, first of all, let's think about what is going to happen when you are a CFO. Could you please type in the meeting? Let's not use the voice because otherwise there are going to be like problems with the recording. Could you type in the chat? What do you think a CFO is going to do daily? Not monthly, not annually, but daily. Let's try to formulate the duties. So daily, like say monthly, annually. And we can also talk about what is going to happen, what is that the or CFO would need to overhaul when they are going to get to work. What do you think? Well, I will tell you what I had when I started working as a CFO. Well, of course, if you work in manufacturing, and especially when you are a girl, you have many people frowning upon you, like, okay, do you really know what you are doing? Or are you just a dog with a talking head? And so you kind of like have to explain people that you indeed are skilled, are knowledgeable, and so on. When it came to the company had problems that it couldn't meet the payment schedule. So the problem that they have is that despite the fact that the revenue has been increasing, despite the fact that they didn't have any problems with the late payments, I mean, their customers pay them according to the contracts, despite the fact that the business was improving, they still couldn't meet their time schedules. So what do you think the problem was? Let's discuss. So the business is so the business was improving, sales were increasing, the customers were good and paying, and the company could not pay suppliers and even employees in time. What do you think the problem was? The problem that I'm talking about is something that you are supposed to study as part of the financial management, and this is called overtrading. Overtrading happens when the company's sales are expanding, and because the company's sales are expanding, the company has to buy goods and as such pay for them for high volumes. But since the payments are usually 1 or 2 months later after the dispatch, they would get sales payments that would happen from small volumes. And this gap in fast growing companies is called overtrading. And interestingly enough, nobody knew what it was. So nobody could understand what is going on. And well, I told them, guys, you need to increase the loan. And of course, it was not easy because you see, the company that I joined grew from being a very small owner-managed company to a big company. It was there was another owner, so there were 2 owners, and the other owners lived abroad. So they were not hands on the business. And the first one, well, of course, for them it was quite scary. So it had to be this leap of faith. It had to be the change in their mental models that they can take a loan, that they can increase loan to several million euros, which is quite a lot, right? It's a great amount, right? And as soon as we took a loan, increased the volume of the loan, the company started working as a well-oiled mechanism. So, well, the company started paying employees in time. And before that, there was a problem, and there were like delays in payments, and the bonuses would not be paid, and so on. And you know what? I would work there, like say, I think that half a year has passed already. And I remember that someone comes to me and asks, okay, so will we get payment this very month? And I would say, of course you are going to get. I mean, like I've been working here for half a year. You are going to always be paid. So yes, the problem was the lack of working capital management, but not really the lack of working capital management because the payments were in time. It was the lack of understanding the concepts. And financial management is going to be the exam that you are going to use the most frequently in your work. Okay, financial planning and reporting. Well, tricky part. So when we're talking about a CFO, we need to understand that there are different types of CFOs, and there are people that call themselves CFOs, but they actually are not. So what happens quite often is that there is a chief accountant, and because this chief accountant is the head of the department, they call them the CFO, but they don't have the skills, they don't have the mindset, so they are still accountants. Now, what about the reporting? Well, reporting can be broken down into several aspects. What we can have an IFRS reporting, indeed, and IFRS reporting is going to be something that is going to be performed annually. Let's put it here. So IFRS reporting. And for IFRS reporting, of course, you are going to need certain knowledge. And you might say that you would need the knowledge of financial reporting. I would kindly disagree with you. I would say that you need the knowledge of SBR, strategic business reporting, more. Why is that? Well, we would need the SBR knowledge because, first of all, nobody will tell us how to account for the issue. Nobody is going to tell us, let's say, that if we have, let's say, installation works, and those installation works last for 3 months, and they start in December and they end in February. Nobody's going to tell you, oh, look, it's IFRS 15, so you need to break down the revenue recognition across the 2 periods. No. So you will have to have this skill of understanding the issue and talking about what this very issue means. And I will tell you the truth that it is quite complicated. So I quite often have these quizzes on my LinkedIn, and I just give people a short question like what, how would we account for that? And usually not more than a third does it right. And we would need the skill of trying to come up with the entries when there is some mess going on and we need to cover and unfold it, what's going on in here. Another problem is, and why we need SBR, is that you will need to defend yourself against the auditors or regulators. Now, let me explain to you. You are going to have certain types of accounting, and when auditors come to your firm, they are less experienced in whatever you do than you are. Let's be frank, quite often you are going to communicate with yesterday's students, new hires that will be hired there to do this field work, and they will have no idea what they are doing. But even if there are seniors that you're communicating with, they just have not as great experience in the industry that you're working. They just have not as much knowledge of your accounting processes and so on. So you will have to defend yourself. You will have to justify why is that you are doing this. And in my career, I had these issues. So, for example, yeah, there are quite other questions. I would kindly ask you to type the questions and not to use your microphone, because otherwise there's going to be too much noise. But anyways, what you would need to do, they would come to you and they would tell you that you need to account it this certain way, and you will have to justify for them that they are not right and you are right, and you have to have this skill of justification. Another problem is that you will need to know how certain actions are going to impact your financial statements. So how actions impact the financial statements or the covenants. What are the covenants? You are going to get a bank loan at some point of time, and the bank loan is going to have the following, like you need to have, let's say, profit margin not lower than that. You will have to have revenue growth not lower than that, and so on. If you don't, then the bank may ask you to repay the loan, not when you were supposed to repay it, but like within a month, 3 months, whatever. And of course, that's a problem. We do understand that most likely the bank is going to give you a waiver, because the bank does not really want to lose a client. The bank is like in any other company, they want to sell their services. So they want to sell you the money so that you would pay them interest. But in the meantime, you kind of like, this is a risk and you don't want to face it. So when the company is going to engage into something, so for example, it's going to, let's say, get leasing, and that's going to increase your debt to equity ratio and your gearing. So you would need to know how it's going to affect the financial statements and whether the financial statements are going to survive that or not. But that thing is going to happen on annual basis. And when we're talking about preparation of IFRS reporting, it basically depends on how large your organization is. Because if the organization is quite large, then most likely all of these reporting issues, they are going to be handled by a different department, and you will not have anything to do with that. So it may be that you won't engage in that at all. And I have had these cases. I worked as a financial consultant with many companies, and they are the CFOs. They didn't know taxes, they didn't know accounting. What they could do and what they did greatly, they could buy expertise from the outside and they could organize the processes. So I had these companies, very successful companies, and in there the CFO would say, okay, we need to change this. Okay, we're going to hire this person and that person and that person. And that is absolutely fine. So this is not the most important skill, but most likely something that you're going to get. Now, when we're talking about, let's say, financial planning and reporting, so we would talk about the budgeting. Well, the budgeting is going to happen most likely once a year, but of course it can be updated more frequently. And with the budgeting, ideally we should persuade people how the budget should be drafted. What are the concepts? Because my observation after working with so many companies as financial consultant is that budget is something that people just suffer through in November and nobody understands why. So when we would talk about the budgeting, we would first start with the question, why is that we want to budget? What would be the budgeting method that we're going to apply? And in here, it's something that we're going to, where we are going to use advanced performance management a lot. And with the budgeting, when we're going to prepare it, of course, we would like to prepare it so that it would be capable of being traced to the actuals, so that let's say we would be able to get those numbers from the accounting systems that we have, from other data sources that the company has. And in order to predict what is going to happen, so pre-calculate electricity cost and so on, you will also need to know the PM. So you would need to be able to talk about the high-low method. You would need to talk about the absorption cost, and you would need to talk about the way that we budget expenses. So let's talk a little bit more in details. So IPM. So IPM is going to help us in the concepts of budgeting, why it is needed. So what is the type of budget, how to organize. So these are going to be high-level questions. It's not about doing, it's about the process. So this is high-level questions. When we're talking about the performance management, we're going to talk about, first of all, high-low method, maybe some regression analysis. We are going to talk about the budgeting as the topic that we have in there, that because with budgets, we don't just prepare the P&L. P&L won't help you to see when you have cash shortages. You have to make the cash projections. And also it won't help you to understand whether you have or don't have money to pay dividends. So you need P&L, you need statement of financial position or balance sheet, and you need the cash flow statement, and the budgeting topic helps us with that. You would need to know most likely the learning curve in order to understand how your new hires are going to work. So we understand that with the new people, well, originally they will need that much time, but then they're going to improve. And maybe that is something that we need to envisage if we get new hires quite frequently. And after we have attempted this budgeting exercise, and this is going to be done annually, we, of course, are going to check budget versus actual, and it's going to be done on monthly basis. So in here, we're going to talk about the analysis. So what topics that you have started would be important for your analysis? Could you please type in the comments in the chat? Budget versus actual analysis. So first of all, what you would need to do, you would need to understand how to, first of all, you would need to have this great Excel or Power BI usage. In order to actually perform that, we would need the variance analysis, and we need to understand what does it mean. So let's say that it's okay, you may have the favorable material price variance, but that would lead you to the adverse labor usage variance. So you need to know the connections, and that has been started by the performance management. You also would need to understand what is the drawbacks of the absorption costing. So what happens quite often is that companies actually have absorption costing implemented in their accounting systems, because according to IS2, we need to also include a portion of overheads. And because we take the data from the accounting system, well, it turns out that we do use some of the absorption costing, and we would need to know how to explain that if the output increases, then the fixed costs are going to be shifted to the next period. And this would mean that our profit is higher than it was supposed to be. Now, okay, this is something that we're going to do monthly. Now, let's look at your other ideas. Investment appraisals. Well, let's call this on demand, okay? So on demand. There is going to be investment appraisals. You are absolutely right. What exam would we need for it? With the investment appraisals. You will need financial management. I will tell you that, well, it is great to study advanced financial management. It's an interesting exam. I have done it, but in my personal view, it's too much for the work of a CFO. Well, let us think. What is that we study in our advanced financial management? In there, we study hedging. So how to calculate the result of futures hedging, forward hedging, options hedging, and so on. Now, most likely your company, especially if it's not huge, won't hedge, because it's really hard to explain that this concept that sometimes you are going to win, but also sometimes you are going to lose to the owner if the business is closely managed by the owner, if there is no board and professional management that understands that and finds it very important. So unfortunately, hedging is not going to work very well. In there, we have different types of, let's say, impact on the results of the company, of restructuring, the cost of that, and so on. So, it also is going to be too much for many companies because if you don't work for a listed company, then these things are not going to be applicable to you. And if you work for a listed company, then probably, well, we are not discussing this issue with you right now. So you're going to get through other additional courses as well. When we are talking about what else, BSOP model, APV, and so on, again, they can be too complicated for those decision makers to take their decision. So it can be a little bit too much. Whereas when we're talking about the financial management, this is going to be your CFO's die book. You're going to use it on a daily basis. So investment appraisal is going to happen when you're going to decide whether to buy expensive piece of equipment or not, whether to outsource or whether to build some, expand your production and do that in-house and so on. Okay, what else do we have? Oh, working capital management, right? Working capital management. This is something that we are going to do more or less on a daily basis. Well, here is an ugly truth. And so ideally, when we are a CFO, our job is to be like to think where we are going, to coordinate the processes and so on. So we shouldn't be engaged in doing, we should be engaged in some higher level matters, and we shouldn't have much of daily workload. But unfortunately, sometimes this happens. So on daily basis, what is that we need to do, or maybe weekly, like daily, weekly basis, we are going to engage into cash planning. Cash planning. So yes, you are going to have this payment schedule, and you're going to say, okay, what is going to happen if, let's say, the something is going to be delayed, and so on. Now, another thing that you would need to do, well, at least once in a while, you are going to have this control of payments overdue. Frankly speaking, it shouldn't be you who's doing that, but we do understand that not every company has a control department. We do understand that there has to be responsible managers, and the manager that is responsible for the client should lead them all the way from the cradle, also when they make this very order, till the very end, till they have paid, and they should get their bonuses only based on the monies that have been received, not on the just mere dispatches. But unfortunately, quite often what happens is that the CFO also has to control the payments overdue to make sure that those types of departments, they work well. Okay, what else are we going to do? Daily, monthly, annually, on demand, and so on. What would be our job as a CFO? Type your ideas in the chat, in the text. And while you're doing that, so again, it doesn't mean that it's only like this, because companies are very different. But it would be important for you to just understand where you are aiming at, and also to understand why whatever you have started is important, so that if you're going to go for an interview, and most likely it's not going to be the CFO job right away, it could be some a little bit lower level, so you would learn how to amuse your boss at the interview by knowing. So any ideas? Any ideas what a CFO does? When we're talking about the annual tasks, we're going to talk about working with the audit. So when we're talking about working with the audit, we are going to talk about the need to manage the processes who's going to supply water, who's going to be responsible for this, for that. We need to make sure that the stock take, which is the most important, that shouldn't be messed up with, is going to go according to the plan. You're going to review the proposals of the auditors to choose the auditors that are better fit for your company, and so on. And with that, with this working with the auditor, you would need to have some basic understanding of AA, of your audit and assurance. I wouldn't say that this is the most important exam. What I like this exam, and it also can be like from time to time on demand, it's about reviewing controls. So we need to make sure that there are controls at all the stages, so that the processes are efficient, so that there is no misappropriation and so on. And audit and assurance has a lot about controls, how controls should be functioning, and you may learn many things that you were not aware of before. But as for AAA, also advanced audit and assurance, I would say that this is quite useless, because with the AAA, the focus is more about the partner of the organization, and so it's about the safeguards to the independence. It's about like rotations and so on. So it's not really about the procedures, not so much about the procedures, but more about this bureaucratical stuff that you need to know in order to be a partner of an audit firm. So I would say that this exam works well only if you're planning to have such a high level in an audit firm. What about managing costs from payroll and procurement? Oh, that is an interesting thing. So you are going to engage, well, quite maybe on monthly basis, maybe more weekly, daily, weekly, in cost management. Okay, so let's talk about cost management. When we're talking about regular basis, we're going to look at reviewing the agreements with suppliers, and we're going to talk about this understanding the cost of discount. So there are going to be the cost of discount. There's ordering cost, holding cost, and so on. Okay, so let me mark the exams here. So PM, then what is that? Payments overdue. It's more about the Excel usage mostly, or if you don't have that automated. Now, reviewing the agreements with suppliers, that is something that we're going to take from the financial management exam. Now, what is that we need to do? Quite often your agreements with suppliers may have some idea, some strictly formulated discounts. So, for example, if the company pays monthly later, months after the shipment, then the supplier is going to charge 2% currency conversion fee. So, what is that? This is basically the fine that you're going to pay, the interest cost that you're going to pay for delaying the payment, and you should compare it, you should analyze it and compare it against the interest rate that is provided to you by the bank. Now, the cost of discount, ordering cost, and holding cost, so economic order quantity cost, is something that you should sometimes review in order to make sure that your management actually follow the best policy for your company, because there will be some goods that are going to be quite bulky, there are going to be some quite perishable, and so on, and you will have to analyze it. Of course, it's not going to happen on a daily basis, but it's going to be something that you do when you have time. What about tax regulators? Do we have to work with them? Usually it's more about the chief accounting job, not about the CFO, because, well, let's face it, when we talk about taxation, that is something that is very specific, and usually there is a separate person that does taxes because of how complicated they are and how important it is to make them in time. What we haven't discussed yet is the cost of debt. So what's going to happen on demand is that we are going to discuss the terms with the banks. When we're going to discuss the terms with the bank, so we are going to, let's say, compare rates. If you are lucky to work in the country which has different currencies that can be used as loans, then you would need to know Fisher formula. You would need to calculate the real rate of interest so that you could compare different offers in different currencies. So, for example, if you have a euro loan at 7% and dollar loan at 8%, you can make a correct assumption which one is going to be better. What else is going to be on demand? Well, maybe not on demand, maybe on an annual basis, you are going to plan dividends. It's going to be a part of your budgeting. It's going to be a part of your planning process, and you are going to plan the dividends so that you could satisfy your shareholders, but also so that you couldn't pay, so that you wouldn't put strain on your resources. Oh, risk management. Okay, so I call it be the only adult in the kindergarten. So yes, let's talk about working with other top management. What happens quite often is that if you look at whatever we study in those high-level exams, you would and will start working, you would realize that this chief marketing is lucky because they just deal with the marketing. So they're like, okay, I press promote the product button and that is it. Chief production officer, they like those usually men with this great hands, these huge hands, they produce and so on. But as for us, unfortunately, we have to know everything and we have to discuss with them. So ideally, this has to be the chief executive officer, but that's not always what happens. Yes, there has to be risk management. Unfortunately, risk management is not something that is envisaged in ACCA syllabus much. So if you're going to look at CIMA, this third level, and especially P3, is more about risk management. And when you qualify, it would be great to just take it and read it and try to attempt questions just for the sake of understanding your career. But also, on the other hand, as some portion of risk management is going to happen when you are going to plan something, because in there you're going to say, okay, what is going to happen if they don't pay? What is going to happen if we're going to lose the customer, and so on. Another thing that we're going to discuss with the top management is the KPIs. What exam studies KPIs? Do you know? Do you remember KPIs? Not PM. PM is kindergarten exam. It's going to be APM, Advanced Performance Management. So my personal view is that it doesn't really matter what your specialty is going to be. So whether you're going to be a CFO, a chief controller, let's say like some head of audit or whatever, the higher your grade is, the more it is about the management, and the less it is about doing whatever you actually started doing when you were employed. And APM is big on KPIs. Why would it be important? Well, the example that I like to show people is, imagine that you are a teenage girl. I used to be a teenage girl, so that example is relatable. And imagine that you decided to lose weight. What are you going to do? Oh, you're going to starve yourself to death. You're going to say, oh, I'm not going to eat proper food. Potatoes should burn in hell. They have too many calories. I am going to eat those supplements of food. That's it. So I'm not going to eat anything. I had a friend and she was almost of the same height as me, so like 175 centimeters, maybe something like that. And she would starve herself so much that she couldn't open the door to the university. She would weigh 45 kilos or something like that. But anyways, has the goal been reached? Well, if we look at the face value of it, so at the value that we see on the scale, on the weight, yes, so like the girl decided that she's going to weigh 40, 50, 60, whatever it is, and the goal is achieved. But is it good? Well, probably no, because if you starve yourself, if you don't eat properly, then your hair is going not to look not so good. Your teeth are going to be damaged especially if you go through those unconventional practices like trying to puke after you have eaten. So you're going to have problems with teeth. You are going to have all other kinds of problems. But why is that? That's because the measure that has been set up was dysfunctional one. And it was dysfunctional because actually you didn't want to lose weight. You wanted to lose weight because you wanted to look good, right? So like have healthier proportions and so on. And instead of weight, your goal should be something different, like let's say kilos of salad that you're going to eat daily. Because the more vegetables you eat, the less room you have for something that is not so good. Or, for example, hours of exercise per week or something like that. And APM is huge on this. And that is something that can be solved very easily. You can open your consultancy firm, but you just creating dashboards. I've created so many dashboards for so many companies. I can't be surprised anymore. This is IPM. Okay, anything else that we can add here? I will show it to you one more time. Okay, now let's discuss what is that we have learned in terms of papers and their importance. So let's start with the lower level exams. I honestly have not seen what was inside of BT, Business and Technology. Well, my journey started with financial accounting. Financial accounting, in my view, is completely useless. And I think that it should be removed from the syllabus at all. Why? Because this very exam is about suspense accounts. Has anyone seen suspense accounts recently, lately, when we have these information systems that do this stuff, that post entries automatically? Highly unlikely. So we can theoretically have it when we use Excel to consolidate, but that's just the exam that is very, very, very outdated. People don't do stuff this very way, and most likely you are not taking ACCA to do this very low level job, so this is useless at all. When we're talking about the management accounting, it can be okay to know the details, because unfortunately quite often you will have to teach people. You won't have a specialist that is going to be fluent in let's say how to calculate absorption costing costs and so on, and because of the lack of knowledge of your new hires, so you'll have to teach them. So maybe, but not super important. Then we have law. Law is good to know, just good to know the concepts like fiduciary liability and so on. But again, this is just the basics. You don't really need it that much. You need to understand that the agreement needs to be revised by the lawyer and so on. And that is it. You don't you need to teach the business that you can't be the person who specializes in everything. It is okay to specialize in different kinds of numbers. It is not okay to specialize in tax and law, because these are separate qualifications and people study for them. Similar, when we're talking about the taxes, I feel that it is okay that you know the main concepts of what VAT is and what is the input VAT, output VAT, and so on. So again, it's good to know the concepts. And most likely you will know them anyway. So if for some reason you got exemptions and you skipped it, well, so be it. Just forget it. Now, when we're talking about the performance management, well, performance management is actually quite good because we discussed it's quite a lot that we can use. The variance analysis, that are used quite a lot, especially when you have lots of products there, budgeting concepts, and so on. So this is going to be heavily used. Then we have, what was that? Okay, 2, 3, 4, this was 6, 5, 7, financial reporting. Well, yes. Then we have audit and assurance. Well, good to know controls. So you don't need to know much about adverse, let's say, opinion or whatever. You probably need to know that you need to cooperate with the audit so that your company wouldn't pay for the audit that is going to give you some modified opinion, and it's just the paper that you don't need because you want like unmodified opinion. But that is it. But it's great to know about the controls. So that part you can revise. Then we have financial management. It's like the most important one. So you make sure when you study that you save the book, that you practice very well, because that is what you're going to use on a daily basis, each and every chapter. AFM, as I told you, too much. Financial management, fantastic. Then we have SBL, Strategic Business Leader. Well, yes, no. On one hand, it would be great to know the concepts like, let's say that you can be either cost leader or differentiator, so you can't aim for both. On the other hand, I don't see that this is going to be much of a CFO's job. So this is more of, let's say, maybe CEO's job, so the directors. And well, most likely the knowledge that you are going to get there is not going to be super relevant, although it would be nice to just have the ideas about how it can be. It could be nice to practice with the scenario. So just nice to read, but not much. And then we have SBR. This is going to be most likely very important because, as I told you, most likely you are going to prepare the statements, financial statements by yourself, because you are going to be the only smart person in the room. Then the next one, AFM. AFM is too much. So this is overstudy. The concepts aren't really used by small and medium entities, which you're most likely to start working with. APM, very important. The most important ACCA exam for anyone, for everyone, because it teaches us how to manage the company, and ultimately it's always about the management. AAA, so it's for partners of audit firms. If that is not your dream job, don't go there. I worked as an auditor, and I really loved being an auditor. I really loved being at my level to deal with the numbers. As for the partners of the audit firm, I didn't see myself there. It's like, it could be nice to make crossword puzzles, or it may be nice to read a book, right? It would be great to read a book, and I love reading books, but I wouldn't like to go and work as a professor who studies books. That would be too much for me. The same with partners of audit firms. And finally, ATX. Well, first of all, it is very specialized to the country that you are going to take your exam at. So I would also say that this is most likely the matter will be covered by the person that specializes in taxes. And as such, maybe it's not the most important thing to study taxes. I would say that it's better to go study AFM rather than taxes. And that is what you need to know if you are going to, if you look at ACCA and feel that your career is going to evolve and you would love it to evolve as being a CFO or like the person that's their CFO's assistant or whatever. And to sum up, the most important exam is financial management. Then it's advanced performance management, SBR, and performance management. So these are going to be the 4 exams. I'm going to highlight them for you. And now, what questions do you have? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Anything? Oh, I have messed up with that, sorry. So I'm going to do it like that. Then this, and then this. Okay, any questions, comments? Okay, now what is also important for you to understand the scenarios that you're going to have in these very papers are those scenarios that you can use in your interviews. Of course, you don't impose that this is something that you have done, so please don't. But this is an example that you can use to show that whatever you understand, whatever you know, is actually valuable. Because the problem is that the more ACCA papers you pass, the more you spin around in those very circles of people that are smart, that are knowledgeable, and are professionals in this very field, the more common sense and common knowledge, whatever you know, is going to appear to you. This is not. So you need to know how to impress. And if that is the job that you are applying to, and if you are at the stage of the interview, make sure that you have read the scenarios in order to show them as examples of why your knowledge can be relevant. Now, that was me, and we're going to meet again next week. And next week, we're going to talk about the study effectiveness technique. So I'm going to teach you a few tricks how to not to forget whatever you are by the end of the exam session. So before the exam, something that you have started to write at the start of your ACCA paper. If you have other questions, other suggestions for the webinars, you are more than welcomed to offer them. So again, any questions? Okay, if no questions, then thank you a lot for coming to meet me tonight, and have a great evening. And I will see you in a week, and some of you I will see this week already. So have a great day. Bye. What about investment banking? Well, if it is investment banking, then of course you need advanced financial management. Advanced financial management, that's going to be your paper that you're going to use the most frequently. Okay. Well, thank you then, and bye.